Thus, we've invited our next guest, Matt Moore, the chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, to talk about the primary. Mr. Chairman, welcome.
It's good to be here.
This electorate, is this state changes like lots of state change? Is this the same South Carolina primary electorate as, say, when George Bush faced off against John McCain, or even when 4 years ago when Mitt Romney faced off against Newt Gingrich, or has it changed at all?
That is the 50-delegate question as we head into the next 10 days. It has changed a lot, and we have a lot of new people here in South Carolina from across the country, but also an electorate here throughout history that has shown a willingness to defy expectations at every turn. So we'll see.
Is it different? Are there people here, for instance, from the Northeast that makes it a less conservative electorate?
There are a lot of Ohioans here. Yeah. There are a lot of New Jerseyans here, which could have could bode well for some candidates in the race.
Right.
So just explain the nature of the Republican primary here relative to, say, Iowa and New Hampshire. You know, just break down the voting blocks that any Republican presidential candidate has to appeal to here in order to win this primary.
Well, the electorate here will be about twice as big as Iowa and New Hampshire combined. About a third of the electorate is very conservative, about a third of the electorate is somewhat conservative, and about a third of the electorate here is moderate. A lot of evangelicals in the upstate. As you go progressively down the state here in Columbia down to the low country, it gets less evangelical, but certainly voters that are interested in national security and social issues and economic issues. South Carolina has a very, very fast-moving economy now with Boeing, BMW, a lot of international manufacturing here. So it's a very transitioning state.
A lot of polling pre-Iowa, New Hampshire here, what there was, and private polling suggested Trump was way ahead. Do you have any reason to believe that Donald Trump is not currently way ahead here?
I think he's ahead. I'm not sure about how much. We haven't seen any polling here since late January. I think certainly he starts here with a good head of steam, as does Senator Ted Cruz and others. And certainly South Carolina may play its traditional role of winnowing the field even further.
Do you have friends who are for Trump?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
What do they like about him?
They like that he's willing to be outspoken. He doesn't care what anyone thinks, and there's certainly something to that. And he's building gigantic crowds across South Carolina, and you can't deny that.
We're going to see George W. Bush on the campaign trail for the first time in a long time. Mm-hmm. It's said that he's very popular in the state. What effect do you think that will have on his brother's fortunes?
Well, he's very popular here. He was a very popular president, won here in 2000, and a very tough victory over John McCain. South Carolina saved, as the newspaper said at that point, his campaign. And of course, his father did well here in '88 and was successful because of it. I think we want to see if that translates to support for Jeb Bush, and if people will change their minds to go to Jeb, and if the maybe 25% of voters who are undecided will go his way.
So I'm trying to put all these various pieces together. We've talked about the way in which the electorate has changed. We've talked about the Bush family's historic strength in this state. In 2012, Newt Gingrich won this primary, won it by a lot, right?
He did, yeah.
Hard for me to exactly understand how the state that saved Bob Dole's campaign in 1996, that was good for George W. Bush in 2004. How does Newt Gingrich win this state? What does that mean? What are the implications of that going forward for this primary?
It was a couple things in 2012 with Newt Gingrich catching fire in that last two debates in South Carolina, but also Newt having a record here for 20 years before. He's sort of from next. Right. Had been here a lot, off and on. But even before that, Governor Haley won a come-from-behind victory here in South Carolina. This is all post-rise of the Tea Party. Now, I'm not sure the Tea Party is as active now here in South Carolina as it's been in the past 6 years or so, but certainly that style of politics is now very popular in South Carolina.
A lot of the candidates in this race have either consultants or politicians or both who are backing them, who have deep roots in the state and have won elections in the state either on the ballot or as consultants. Whose team do you think is strongest?
They've all got strong teams. Senator Cruz has a couple of South Carolinians in his senior staff. The same thing remains true of Senator Rubio. Of course, Governor Bush has long roots here the past 30 years. They've all got a lot of South Carolinians at the top. It's very smart.
Yeah. Does anybody have a field organization based on their endorsements or what they've built that you think is better?
I've been very impressed so far with Senator Cruz's operation. His super PAC, to their credit, has really been active, going door to door. My parents-in-law had a volunteer come to their house this past weekend. That kind of thing, I think, matters on the very edges in a very close election. As we get into a bigger primary here, it matters less maybe than Iowa and New Hampshire, but it certainly can matter.
All right, so ground matters a little bit, but is not decisive. How much does air matter here? Does TV ads and does the ad war, he's got to be determinative in this primary?
I'm not sure it's determinative. I think people are just now at this point so awash in TV ads, it may not matter a whole lot. I think it's built a lot of name ID for candidates that didn't have it. Right. Of course, Trump has different in that category. He came into the race with a lot of it. He's also running ads, though, which is interesting. I've seen ads for Senator Cruz, Senator Rubio, of course, Right to Rise, and Governor Bush's team are doing a lot of ads here. I'm not sure the ads will be the deciding factor in this race. I think still it's a combination of retail, plus, as you guys know, catching a little bit of luck at the very end.
South Carolina is first in the South, following Iowa and New Hampshire. Those states, some voters put a premium on saying, we really want to elect someone or pick someone in this process who goes on to be the nominee, maybe be president. Our status. You all picked Gingrich last time, who didn't go on to be the nominee. Do you get the sense that voters here, or some meaningful number of the voters, are saying, let's vote for somebody who can be our next president as opposed to somebody we agree with?
Well, it's fascinating. For 30 years before Newt Gingrich, we had picked the eventual nominee every single cycle. Right. It's an amazing record, and then changed. I do think a sizable portion of people here, I think it's very much correlated to the undecideds that are interested in who's electable versus Hillary Clinton or maybe Bernie Sanders. We'll see, but that's a true point you're making.
Yeah, and far out, we may not be able to say, but do you expect, as the other states had a pretty robust turnout in this primary?
Yeah, we had 600,000 voters in 2012, which was a record by about 150,000. If you kind of game out the math the same way in Iowa and New Hampshire with the increase, about 650,000 voters here in South Carolina would be an incredible turnout for us.
Think you'll get more?
Probably so. I think we'll get a new record.
All right, Matt Moore, chairman of the state party here, thank you. We'll be spending time with you and visiting, as we say, over the next couple weeks. When we come back, we switch the chairs around, bring in the Democratic chair, talk about that race. And remember,